there's a difference between lifespan and health span. And while we have that health span, being able to take those hikes or venture walking 10 miles in a city, that was really important to me. So 4 months in the US with friends and family and doing van life, 4 months in Chile, helping out with the in-laws, and then 4 months overseas out of a backpack. I travel with a personal item only. So
this is Dan of Vagabond Awake, and we're happy to have Bryce on the channel. Bryce?
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. Appreciate it. So Bryce, where in the world are we sitting, and where's your home country?
We are in Santiago, Chile, and my home country is the United States. Grew up in the Northeast and spent most of my time an hour to an hour and a half north of New York City.
And how long have you been here?
This stint, the middle of March is when my tourist visa comes up, and they have 90-day visas. So we've been here through the holidays and that sort of thing. But generally, come for 3 months every year, my tourist visa, and then bounce to someplace else. Usually trying to avoid the winter. It's good to have a spot to avoid the northern hemisphere during the winter.
Oh yeah, that's great. And why Santiago, Chile?
First and foremost, my wife is Chilean. So there's a big draw for friends and family down here. And I think having a hub of sorts to avoid the winter is certainly nice. I like big city life. It's relatively safe. It's modern. Wonderful mass transit here. And yeah, I eat 100% plant-based diet, so I find the food is wonderful here. Although Chile's not really known for their food, but I enjoy it. And yeah, I think healthcare is pretty good. $10 USD bus ride to be on the coast and on the beach. Could be a day trip if you wanted, so there's a lot of positives.
Yeah. And so when did the idea that, hey, maybe I won't spend my whole life in the US become a thing for you?
2015, I got divorced, and I met my wife now, and that really opened my eyes to international travel. I originally was planning for early retirement, but it was more so van life within the US. That really spoke to me. But there's a lot of parallels that go with frugal travel in overseas. And certainly having someone who's a native Spanish speaker was a big motivation to kind of get out of my shell.
Right.
I probably would have gotten there eventually as an extrovert, but she certainly helped. But now, maybe our eventual style will be 4 months in the US with friends and family and doing van life, 4 months in Chile, helping out with the in-laws and seeing friends and family, and then 4 months overseas out of a backpack. I travel with a personal item only, so I'm looking forward to that stage as well.
That's a nice mix. I don't recall ever hearing that mix on my channel before.
You've had a lot of interviews.
I know I have, but that particular mix is very interesting.
Are more of your interviews with just pure expats where they've plopped down in one country, or where's your viewership?
I would say probably 70% at least are plopped down in one place. And then the other, what I call slow travel, which is kind of what you're saying, slow travel, but with sort of two hubs that are constant, and then 4 months of wherever you feel like in the world.
Yeah, we have a small studio apartment north of New York City, which I will never be able to afford again, in this current market. So kind of working through that thought process of, do you keep it? Do you sell it? It's a co-op, so we cannot rent it out. And frankly, I don't want to worry about renters. And we may sell it one day, but I think as slow travelers, like you said, we don't have everything figured out. So giving ourselves the grace of holding on to it for now, and one day when it's super apparent that, oh, I really love this place or that place, we could sell it or certainly keep it. So our style of travel, kind of like hub and spoke, where pick a major city, then take day trips. That seems to be about our style today. But I may also branch out to do some travel on my own where more gritty, stay in hostels, take a bus, across the country, that sort of thing, do some hikes, that sort of thing. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's great. So were you gunning for early retirement? And if you did, what was your strategy for that? Because you're way younger than my typical person I meet.
I'm 47.
Okay.
So I hide my gray hairs. So just have less of them every day. definitely the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early, was something that was building in me, and it hit hard. I was working long hours in a corporate job, 80 to 100 hours a week, kind of just the corporate culture was meant to make you feel like you're never good enough.
Yeah.
Even though you're getting great performance reviews and compensation, like that's how I felt anyway. And so eventually I was starting looking for ways out, and I found it wasn't really material things. It was more so I wanted experience. And there's a difference between lifespan and health span. And while we have that health span, being able to take those hikes or venture walking 10 miles in a city, that was really important to me. So yeah, so the big corporate job pushed me towards FIRE. And my version of FIRE is can be different than other people. Usually it's whole market index funds with stocks and bonds. Don't try and pick the winners, just try and own the market, and then work off what's called a safe withdrawal rate. You may have heard of the 4% rule before. Yeah. But other people do it by leveraging real estate, which is less passive. And just for my style of travel, whether it was in a van down by the river or traveling overseas, I didn't want a tenant calling me about a leaky pipe in the middle of the night. I didn't want to have to evict someone, just not my style. So that was kind of my play for early retirement. I've been thinking about it for a very long time. At one point I wanted to make about early retirement, the FIRE principles, financial independent, retire early, that plays into maybe your channel in traveling is
this ebook taught me everything I needed to know about money so I could travel freely all over this amazing world. To get a free copy, either scan this QR code with your smartphone or click the second link in the notes below this YouTube video.
That plays into maybe your channel in traveling is being able to combine where you lay your head down at night, which is your single biggest expense, with your transportation costs and your entertainment. When we talk about van life, yeah, your van is your rent. It's also your transportation, and it can bring you immense entertainment experiences by traveling in North America. When we look at doing slow travel overseas, just by nature of plopping yourself down in a new major city, that's a whole new wave of, I don't know if entertainment, but experiences of figuring out how the metro works and where's the good place to get groceries. Is there free museums on weekends? And how do I meet some local expats? So all those similar principles really work for slow travel. If you're going to travel really fast, I think it erodes a lot of those benefits because your travel costs go up. But slow travel or expat life, you can certainly apply a lot of those FIRE principles.
So for new people who haven't heard of it, what's a short story on the FIRE principle or concepts?
The basic concept is, how do you not make enough, but save enough to generate passive income in retirement? And a lot of people think that I don't know how much I need, but basically some basic formulas might be with index funds is you need 25 times your retirement budget. Okay, that's great. How much can you save? But what's your retirement budget? I live on much less than I ever made. Part of that is living internationally or in a van. So 25 times your yearly spendings, accounting for taxes and all that other stuff, it's roughly 4%. And there's been some studies done that maybe if you drop it to 3.5% of your investment portfolio, you can draw that from your investment portfolio in perpetuity. Yeah. So if you're an early retiree like me, yeah, you can go 40, 50, 60 years based on historical returns. So that's kind of the basics there.
Yeah.
Lots to Google out there.
Yeah.
I used to have a blog, trying to detail it. It's gone now. But yeah, it's a lot of research out there to read about.
Right. So what does a typical month living like this cost you versus if you're back home?
In terms of my cost back home, we're there less and less. So I don't have a great budget for you. We were there at the end of 2025. So maybe, I didn't have enough time this morning to dig through our expenses. Yeah. But I'll certainly get you some numbers as to what we live off of. And then maybe compare how we replicate that down here. But in terms of Chile, in Santiago, I was asking some of my younger friends that are here, young professionals, that's just the friends that I have here. I would say 1.5 million pesos was a good number. There's a couple desirable neighborhoods that you would live in Chile, in Santiago. And we're talking more like the hip, arty, up-and-coming neighborhoods, specifically Barrio La Estaria, Nunua, Barrio Italia. Those are some of the like good bang for buck, I would say, central neighborhoods. And from what I recall, you could pay anywhere from 650,000 Chilean pesos to maybe 750,000 Chilean pesos for anywhere from a small studio up to like a good size 1-bedroom. But yeah, 1.5 million would be a good middle class living in those 3 up and coming neighborhoods, probably drifting up towards 2 million pesos. You know, if there's some more maybe Americanized things that you need, something like that. So one kind of budget buster I find, not only in the US, but a nice hack here in Chile is going to local street markets for your fruits and vegetables. Incredible fruits and vegetables. I could show you some pictures, maybe you can pop them on the screen, just like massive broccoli and huge head of cabbage, and really cheap, cheap. So if you shop in the major supermarkets, especially in the nicer neighborhoods, you're probably going to pay more, but that's a really great way to minimize your costs.
Yeah, there's one near here we go to. It's probably not as cheap as outside the city center, but
I think maybe somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 pesos per kilo. I don't remember.
3,000.
Yeah, that's a good price.
For blueberries,
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Like generally, I don't speak for all of Santiago, but there's usually within walking distance in your neighborhood a nice street market where it's just a really nice experience. Wonderful people to interact with, and again, really good high quality vegetables and fruits.
Very cool, yeah. So how would you say life feels different, in particular here in Santiago versus in New York, where you live when you're in the States?
It allows me to be a snowbird. In the United States, I think costs are expensive regardless, especially in major cities, but it affords my wife and I the ability to be snowbirds. I think my blood is kind of thinning. Maybe that Florida blood, I used to hear of as like, what does that mean? Like, I want to be where it's warmer, not burning hot, but it affords that ability, which is quite nice. That's a difference. And I absolutely adore mass transit. I love countries and cities that invest in it. I mean, they're continuing to build transit lines here, and we've had that same experience all across Latin America and major cities that we travel to. In terms of affording a life, like, I'm not bored when I'm visiting friends and family in the United States. I mean, we're an hour north of New York City, but I enjoy changing my surroundings every once in a while. So bouncing to Sao Paulo, Belo Horizonte in Brasilia is where we've visited in Brazil. We spent 5 months in Medellin and Bogota in Colombia, which was wonderful. We spent time here in Santiago and then, of course, in Mexico City. So I really like the changes and visiting old friends and making new ones.
Yeah, those are all great choices.
Thank you. I feel validated on Dan's channel now.
So what about medical? Have you had a chance to use medical or dental here, and what was your experience and cost and that kind of thing?
Knock on wood, I'm relatively healthy, so I haven't experienced it. And I would just talk in generalities. My wife has gotten checkups and things here. I would say that way cheaper than the US, which is almost kind of the default answer now. High quality, just as high quality as our experiences in Colombia, which is known for its healthcare. Tad more expensive though here, but still high quality. And the pricing's up front, which is not something that is the norm in the United States. So that's been welcomed as also.
I've never heard anyone say that, but that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, when you get outside the United States and you want to know what something costs, you can
it's
find
generally
out.
A price, yeah. And we haven't exercised any sort of international healthcare plan or that sort of thing, but from my limited understanding there, the price is the price, and then you go to your insurance company for reimbursement. There isn't this kind of two-tiered, if you pay with insurance, it's this much, if it's cash, it's this, and I'll get back to you after the procedure, which doesn't feel very good with someone who's on a limited retirement budget.
Yeah, that's true. So what sort of visa do you have when you're here? And then what are typical expats from whatever country getting when they come here that you're aware of?
So most of our friends are locals. so I can't speak to a lot of expats here.
Okay.
I enter on a 90-day tourist visa, never had any problem coming into the country or anything like that. You can start the process. You can pretty easily, from what I understand, get a 1-year temporary visa. Maybe you're a student on a longer term, you know, you're going to university here, or you can show that you have some basic income, you know, and they're like, okay, you can stay for a year.
Yeah.
And I think you can extend that up to 2 years. And then a lot of people from there will jump to applying for a permanent residency. Yeah. Now, from what I understand, again, YouTube, don't quote Bryce here. You need to check on this. But I think you have to leave and go back to your home country to apply for that permanent residency. But then, you know, you'd have to tack on maybe another year finally to get through the paperwork and, you know, get the approvals, that sort of thing. So that's not my experience, but that's what I've heard.
Okay. Does this feel permanent to you, this rotation you're doing?
I would really love to experience van life in the US. I had a taste of it during COVID. At the time, you know, I could spend my time in my little tiny apartment going nuts, or I could be in the desert in Arizona, still safely away from everyone, but backpacking and hiking. So I really enjoyed that, and I'd like to experience it more. Yeah, we are spending less and less time in the United States as time goes on for various reasons, but maybe that'll change. I think we are entering our, call it go-go years of retirement, where you're happy, healthy, everything's going well. Maybe you're not taking care of elderly parents and that sort of thing. So I think we'll still follow this slow travel, you know, at least a month in every major city up to the extent of the tourist visa in that given country. I still really want to experience Eastern Europe and Southeast Asia. So for now, I think, yeah, setting a base for a couple months and moving around within a country is our style. And then, you know, as I think we all know, we'll never see it all, right? There's just so much to see.
No.
But once you there will be a time where we slow down, where maybe then we'll go to snowbirding and have either keep our small base in the US and one outside the US, or maybe one in Southeast Asia, one in South America. And maybe that's our slow go years, you know, where, hey, it's burning season in Southeast Asia. Yeah, it's time to go, you know? Yeah. And then eventually the conversation turns to, how good is the healthcare for like your no-go years in a given country? What are the costs? You know, I'm child-free by choice. And even if I had kids, they're not guaranteed to have the ability or want to come take care of me. So where could I find relatively inexpensive in-home care? You know, if I needed help with the laundry or, you know, helping me get through the day. So those sort of questions will start to formulate as time goes on. But yes, in my usual long-winded response, this is kind of our travel path for now.
That's great. Well, Bryce, it's been a joy chatting with you. Like I said, I've been watching your comments on the channel for years, and it's nice to finally meet you in person.
Yeah, ditto. It's been great. Thank you.
All right. I'm not rich, but I live a rich life. And I credit this book. So make sure to scan this QR code, get a copy of it, and do what it says. If you're curious about slow travel, which is how Bryce, my guest, and I travel around the world, watch this playlist right here. There's videos on there that teach you what slow travel is, how to do it, how to save money, that kind of stuff.